Imagine for a moment that you are one of the richest people in the world. You have everything money can buy: mansions, luxury cars, private jets, companies worth billions. But there's something all your money couldn't buy: peace in your own home. Until one day, a soft melody coming from your baby's room changes everything forever. This is the extraordinary story of Richard Montgomery, a Silicon Valley tech billionaire, and Maria Santos, a Mexican immigrant working as a maid in his mansion. What happened between them not only transformed their lives but touched the hearts of millions around the world. Prepare yourself for a story that will make you question everything you think about wealth, family, and the true meaning of success. A story that proves sometimes the most precious gifts come from the most unexpected sources. Richard Montgomery was known throughout Silicon Valley as the Midas King of Tech. At 42, he had built a digital empire worth over $8 billion. His company, Technova Solutions, had revolutionized artificial intelligence and placed him among the 10 richest men in the United States. Living in a 15,000 square foot mansion in Palo Alto, Richard had everything he ever dreamed of: professional success, worldwide recognition, and wealth enough for several lifetimes. But his personal life was a complete disaster. He had recently divorced his wife, Catherine, after discovering she had cheated on him with his best friend and business partner. The divorce was devastating not only emotionally but also because Catherine took shared custody of Emma, the couple's 2-year-old daughter. Richard, always a workaholic, suddenly found himself alone in a massive mansion, seeing his daughter only on alternate weekends. Emma was a special child. Born with a rare medical condition that affected her neurological development, she required constant specialized care. Doctors said she might face significant learning and social development challenges. Richard loved his daughter more than anything in the world, but he admitted he didn't know how to care for her properly. Across town, in a small apartment in East Palo Alto, lived Maria Santos. At 35, she had left her hometown of Guadalajara, Mexico, 12 years earlier in pursuit of the American dream. It wasn't an easy journey. Maria arrived in the United States with just $100 in her pocket, didn't speak English, and left her 3 young children behind with her mother. Over the years, Maria worked tirelessly at multiple jobs, cleaning offices at night, caring for the elderly in the morning, and cleaning family homes in the afternoon. Every cent she earned was carefully saved to send to her children in Mexico and to save up to bring them to the United States. What few people knew about Maria was her extraordinary talent. She had an angelic voice. In Guadalajara, she had been a semi-professional singer, performing at weddings, parties, and local events. Music was her passion, her way of expressing all the emotions she carried inside: longing for her children, hope for a better future, the pain of separation. In the United States, Maria rarely sang. Life was too hard, the work too heavy, and she saw no room for musical dreams in her daily struggle for survival. But sometimes, when she was alone cleaning an office late at night, or when the longing for her children overwhelmed her, she would softly sing the lullabies she used to sing to her own babies. Richard's life completely fell apart when Catherine decided to move to New York with Emma, claiming she wanted a fresh start, and that Richard was never present anyway. She won court approval to take their daughter across the country. Richard was reduced to seeing Emma just one weekend a month. It was during this dark time that Richard decided to bring Emma to spend a few weeks with him during the summer. He had fired the last nanny after a series of problems, and was desperate to find someone who could care for Emma properly. His personal assistant, after much searching, found Maria through a domestic staffing agency that also provided childcare services. The interview was tense. Richard, accustomed to highly qualified, fluent English-speaking employees, initially hesitated to hire Maria. Her English was functional but not perfect, and she had no formal experience as a nanny. But something in her eyes, a genuine kindness and a deep sadness he recognized in himself, made him give her a chance. Maria accepted the job because it paid 3 times more than her other jobs. She could finally speed up her plans to bring her children to the United States. But when she arrived at Richard's mansion, she was intimidated by its opulence. She had never worked in such a luxurious place and felt completely out of place. The first few days were extremely difficult. Emma was a challenging child. Due to her medical condition, she had inconsolable crying episodes, trouble sleeping, and tantrums that could last for hours. Richard, stressed and overwhelmed with work, often lost patience with his daughter, which only made things worse. Maria watched all this with a heavy heart. She saw a wealthy but emotionally impoverished man who clearly loved his daughter but didn't know how to connect with her. and she saw a small child who was confused, scared, and desperately in need of love and stability. Cultural and language barriers made everything more complicated. Richard only spoke to Maria about practical tasks, always rushed, always distant. She felt invisible, more like an expensive object in the mansion than a real person. Several times, she considered quitting, especially when Richard harshly reprimanded her for giving Emma inappropriate food. Everything changed on a particularly tough night. It was a rainy Thursday in July, and Emma was having one of her most intense crises. She had been crying for 3 hours straight, rejecting all attempts at comfort. Richard was at his breaking point, pacing back and forth in his office, trying to work but constantly interrupted by his daughter's cries. Around 11 p.m., he decided to go upstairs to see if he could calm Emma. Maria was in the child's room, walking with her in her arms, trying everything: bottles, toys, TV, electronic children's music. Nothing worked. Richard entered the room visibly frustrated. "Maria, this can't go on like this. Emma needs to sleep, and I need to work. If you can't control her." He stopped mid-sentence when he saw silent tears streaming down Maria's face. She was exhausted, having worked 14 hours straight, and her desperation was evident in her eyes. "I'm sorry, Senor Montgomery," she said with a trembling voice. "I don't know what else to do. Ella está muy triste, very sad." In that moment, something broke inside Richard. For the first time in years, he truly saw Maria as a person, not just an employee. He saw a woman who was trying as hard as he was, who genuinely cared for Emma. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "I shouldn't have spoken to you like that. You've been doing an amazing job." Maria looked at him, surprised. It was the first time he had spoken to her with kindness, and then, something magical happened. Without thinking, Maria began to sing softly. It was a Mexican lullaby she used to sing to her own children. "Dormit mi Nina." Her voice, filled with emotion and longing, filled the room with a gentle, hypnotic melody. The effect was immediate. Emma stopped crying instantly, her little eyes fixed on Maria's face, and she began to relax in the woman's arms. Within minutes, the child was sleeping peacefully. Richard stood completely still. He had never heard anything so beautiful in his life. Maria's voice wasn't just technically perfect, it carried an emotion so pure, so profound, that it touched something in his soul he had forgotten existed. From that night on, everything changed in the Montgomery mansion. Emma, who had always struggled to sleep, began sleeping peacefully every night when Maria sang to her. More than that, the child started showing developmental progress that surprised even her doctors. Richard began coming home earlier, officially to check on Emma, but really to hear Maria sing. He discovered she sang during various activities throughout the day, while cooking, cleaning, playing with Emma. Each song was a window into her soul, telling stories of love, longing, hope, and pain. Slowly, Richard began talking more with Maria. He learned about her 3 children in Mexico: Diego, 14, Ana, 12, and little Jose, 10. He learned she hadn't seen them in 3 years, that she worked 16 hours a day to send them money, and that her greatest dream was to bring them to the United States. Maria, in turn, began to see beyond Richard's wealth. She saw a deeply lonely man who had lost connection with everything that truly mattered in life. She saw someone who, despite all his wealth, was poorer than her in many ways. Their connection deepened when Richard discovered Maria was learning English through YouTube videos on her old phone, studying late into the night after an exhausting workday. He was deeply moved by her determination. "Why do you work so hard?" he asked one night, finding her studying in the kitchen at 2 a.m. "For Ms. Hios," she replied simply. "Everything I do for my children." It was then that Richard made a decision that would change everything. He decided to help Maria bring her children to the United States. When he told her, Maria burst into tears, for the first time in years, tears of joy. But the biggest shock was yet to come. Richard had secretly recorded Maria singing, initially just for his own enjoyment. But the more he listened to the recordings, the more convinced he became that the world needed to hear her extraordinary voice. Without telling Maria, he sent one of the recordings to a friend who was an executive at a major record label in Los Angeles. The response was immediate and enthusiastic. "Richard, where did you find this treasure?" This woman has one of the purest, most moving voices I've ever heard." The big reveal happened on a Sunday morning. Richard had invited Maria for a special breakfast with Emma. When she arrived in the dining room, she found not only Richard and Emma but also 3 children she recognized immediately from video calls: her children Diego, Ana, and Jose. Maria broke down in tears, unable to believe what she was seeing. Richard had used his contacts and resources to expedite their immigration process, brought Maria's children to the United States, and housed them in a luxury hotel for the past 2 weeks, preparing the surprise. How did you do this?" she asked through her tears, hugging her children for the first time in 3 years. "You brought music back into my life, Maria. You brought Emma back to me. It was the least I could do," Richard replied, visibly moved. But the surprises didn't stop there. Richard had prepared something even bigger. He had used his connections to organize a private showcase with executives from the biggest record labels in Los Angeles. Maria would be presented as the next big musical discovery. "I don't understand," Maria said, confused. "I'm just a maid who sings to the baby." "No, Maria. You're an extraordinary artist who changed our lives. And now the whole world will know your talent." The showcase was an absolute success. Maria sang 5 songs, a mix of traditional Mexican music and emotional covers of American and Latin classics. There wasn't a dry eye in the audience. 3 record labels made offers that same day. But the story doesn't end with million-dollar contracts and fame. The most important part was the personal transformation both underwent. Richard learned that true wealth isn't in bank accounts, but in genuine human connections. He started working less, spending more time with Emma, and became a father figure to Maria's children. Emma, in turn, flourished under Maria's loving care, surpassing many of the limitations doctors had predicted. Maria signed a contract with a major record label but maintained her simple philosophy of life. She bought a modest house near Richard's mansion, where she could continue caring for Emma while developing her music career. Her children integrated perfectly into American life, all becoming excellent students. The story of Richard Montgomery and Maria Santos went viral when Richard decided to share it on his social media. The video of Maria singing to Emma was viewed by over 100 million people worldwide. People from all corners of the globe were moved by this story of how music, love, and compassion can break all barriers. Maria released her first album, Songs of Love and Longing, which became a global phenomenon. She donated 50% of the profits to organizations that help immigrants and separated families. Richard, inspired by her story, created a foundation that provides educational and artistic opportunities for children of immigrants. Today, 3 years later, Maria is one of the most respected Latin singers in the world but still sings to Emma every night. Richard, who once thought money was everything, discovered that the most precious things in life, love, family, music, compassion, have no price. Emma, now 5 years old, is a happy, healthy child who speaks perfect English and Spanish. She calls Maria, Tia, Aunt, and considers Diego, Ana, and Jose her siblings. Doctors say her development has exceeded all expectations, attributing much of it to the loving, musically rich environment she grew up in. The Palo Alto mansion, once silent and cold, is now always filled with music, laughter, and love. Richard and Maria never married, but they developed a deep friendship and family partnership stronger than any contract. This story teaches us several important lessons. First, that sometimes the most precious gifts come from the most unexpected sources. Richard, with all his wealth, was emotionally bankrupt until a Mexican maid brought music and love into his life. Second, that no matter how different we are in terms of culture, language, or social class, we all share the same basic needs: love, connection, family, and purpose. Maria and Richard came from completely different worlds but found common ground in their love for Emma and music. Third, that true success is not measured only in money or status but in our ability to positively impact the lives of others. Richard had been technically successful for years, but he only found true fulfillment when he used his resources to help Maria and her family. Fourth, that we all have unique talents that can make a difference in the world. Maria could have remained invisible, just another immigrant maid. But her musical talent, when discovered and nurtured, touched millions of lives around the world. And finally, that music has the unique power to unite hearts, heal wounds, and build bridges between different worlds. It was through music that Maria managed to soothe Emma, touch Richard's heart, and eventually conquer the world. When asked in a recent interview what the most important moment of her life was, Maria didn't mention the $1 million contract or global success. "It was the first night I sang to Emma," she said. "In that moment, I wasn't just lulling a child to sleep. I was building a family, creating love where there was only loneliness before." Richard, in turn, always says that Maria saved not only Emma but also himself. "I thought I had everything, but I actually had nothing. Maria taught me that true wealth lies in the relationships we build and the lives we touch." This story continues to inspire people around the world. It proves that no matter how lost we may be, no matter how different we are, there is always hope for connection, growth, and transformation. It proves that sometimes salvation comes in the most unexpected forms, through the voice of a humble woman singing a lullaby to a child who isn't biologically hers but whom she loves as her OW. In a world often divided by prejudice, fear, and inequality, the story of Richard Montgomery and Maria Santos reminds us of our shared humanity. It reminds us that we all have something valuable to offer, we all deserve love and opportunity, and we all have the power to transform lives, including our own. May this story inspire you to look beyond superficial differences and recognize the extraordinary potential in every person you meet. Who knows? Maybe the next person to change your life is right in front of you, waiting for a chance to show their true brilliance. As Maria said in her most famous song, "El amor no conoce fronteras, la música no tiene idioma, y el corazón humano siempre reconoce el corazón humano, love knows no borders. Music has no language, and the human heart always recognizes the human heart." And so, through a simple lullaby, 2 lives were transformed, a family was formed, and the world became a little brighter.